The stars had always been humanity's greatest symbol of hope. From ancient civilizations that looked to the sky for answers to the modern-day explorers who sought to unlock the secrets of the universe, humanity had long dreamed of the stars. But for Captain Sarah Matthews, standing on the bridge of the SS Valiant, those same stars now felt like a looming threat. Welcome to HFY Genesis. Today we're diving into an epic sci-fi journey, the day the galaxy feared humanity. This story is packed with intense battles, unforgettable characters, and humanity's rise against overwhelming odds. I've poured my heart and soul into creating this universe for you, and I really hope you enjoy the ride. So buckle up, and let's jump into this thrilling adventure. Her hands gripped the command chair with a force that matched the cold, seething anger inside her. She stared at the stars on the viewing screen. The silence of space was deafening, but it was a silence that would soon be shattered. In that quiet, Sarah could hear the ghosts of her past, the lives lost, the battles fought, the world that had once been hers. The remnants of Earth, once vibrant and filled with hope, now lay in ruin under the oppression of a far superior enemy. The Zeltrax Dominion, a galactic empire that had swallowed countless worlds, was coming for Earth. For years, humanity had watched from the sidelines as the Dominion wiped out civilizations, enslaved species, and spread their dark reign across the stars. They were invincible, or so it seemed. Sarah Matthews had always believed in the strength of humanity. But as she stood in the dark, cold expanse of space, she felt the weight of what was to come. The Dominion had already destroyed her world once before, tearing through its defenses with ease. Earth had bent, yes, but Sarah would never let it break. She would make sure of that. The SS Valiant was humanity's last line of defense, a ship unlike any other. Built from salvaged Dominion technology, its sleek hull was forged in the fires of desperation. It wasn't just a warship. It was a symbol of defiance, of humanity's refusal to submit, no matter the odds. A faint alarm pinged, breaking Sarah from her thoughts. Aurora, the AI guiding the ship, spoke with her usual calm voice, though Sarah could sense a hint of urgency. "Captain, the Dominion fleet has entered the sector. They're within striking distance." Sarah's gaze sharpened. The Dominion had arrived, their ships cutting through space like a knife through flesh. It was no longer a question of if they would conquer Earth, but when, and humanity, as much as they had prepared, was outmatched. Yet, there was one thing the Dominion didn't understand. Humans had a power they couldn't anticipate: survival. It was in their blood. From the moment they had learned to walk upright, humanity had struggled, fought, and risen above every challenge the universe had thrown at them. And this time, Sarah swore they would do it again. "They think we're defenseless," she muttered, her eyes narrowing. "But they don't know who they're up against." Aurora's voice returned, steady and unfazed. "Captain, the Dominion has sent a message. Shall I play it?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "Play it." The message crackled through the comms, the harsh, guttural voice of Vishkar, the Dominion's supreme commander, sending a chill down Sarah's spine. "Humanity is weak. You will surrender. You will kneel. This is your last chance. Resist, and you will be erased from existence." The transmission ended with the hum of static, leaving a silence so heavy it felt suffocating. Sarah let the words hang in the air for a moment, then shook her head, a grim smile curling at the corners of her lips. "They think we'll kneel. They think they can crush us. But they've never met humans before," she said, voice low but filled with fiery conviction. She turned to face her crew, her expression one of unwavering determination. She wasn't just leading a warship. She was leading humanity's last stand. "Gather everyone. It's time to show them what happens when you push humans too far." There was no more time for hesitation. The Zeltrax Dominion might have been a giant in the galaxy, but giants had their weaknesses. And Sarah Matthews knew how to exploit them. The quiet hum of the SS Valiant's engines reverberated through the hull, filling the ship with a subtle energy that matched the crew's anticipation. For the first time in years, Sarah Matthews felt a flicker of hope that felt real. Not just the desperate hope of survival, but the genuine belief that they could win. The Dominion's message had left Earth teetering on the edge of despair, but Sarah knew humanity was capable of so much more. As the battle strategies unfolded, Sarah stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the positions of Dominion forces scattered across Earth's orbit. The battle had only just begun, but the Zeltrax Dominion had already underestimated the resistance that had been quietly growing in the shadows. Sarah was surrounded by her most trusted officers, Commander James Carrick, the tactical genius who could predict enemy movements with terrifying accuracy, and Lieutenant Elena Rivers, a former Dominion engineer who had defected with invaluable knowledge of their technologies. "Captain, we've got our first target." Carrick's voice broke through the silence, his finger hovering over a holographic point in the data feed. The flickering lights of the command center cast shadows on his face, but his gaze was intense. A Dominion supply convoy heading toward the outer colonies. If we strike now, we can cripple their supply lines before they can regroup. Sarah considered the proposal. It was bold, but the more she thought about it, the more it felt right. Every moment they delayed would give the Dominion more time to prepare, more time to bring reinforcements. The SS Valiant, armed with stolen Dominion weapons and human ingenuity, was ready to face the challenge. If they could disrupt the Dominion's resources, they could shift the balance. "We move in 15 minutes, Sarah commanded, her voice steady. "We take the fight to them." The stakes were clear. Sarah knew that this strike was not just about weakening the Dominion. It was about proving to her people that they were not alone, that humanity could rise in the face of insurmountable odds. But beneath her steady exterior, there were cracks. Memories of her lost comrades, of Earth burning under the Dominion's iron fist, gnawed at her. She had once believed that humanity could not fight against such overwhelming power. Now, she had to prove that she was wrong. Sarah turned to Elena Rivers, who had been carefully analyzing the Dominion tech they had captured. Elena's loyalty to the Resistance was beyond question, but Sarah could see the weight of the task ahead of her, the fear of failure, the uncertainty that came with every decision. "You're ready?" Sarah asked, meeting her eyes. Elena gave a quick nod, though her lips pressed together in a tight line. "I'll make sure the tech is up to date, Captain. We're ready to strike fast and hard." The SS Valiant crept through the void, hidden in the dark, silent as death itself. But that silence was shattered when they neared the Dominion convoy. The ship's hull shimmered with the faint glow of cloaking technology, making it almost invisible to the enemy's sensors. Still, Sarah knew the element of surprise would only last for so long. They had to act fast. The crew scrambled to their stations, each knowing their role in the coming battle. The Dominion fleet was not unprepared, but they had no idea what was coming. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she prepared for the first strike. This was no longer just a reconnaissance mission. It was a declaration. "Ready all weapons," Sarah ordered, her voice cutting through the tense silence. In an instant, the SS Valiant decloaked, unleashing its payload with the precision of a scalpel. Explosions rocked the Dominion convoy as the first wave of plasma torpedoes tore through their shields, rendering their defenses useless. Sarah's heart raced as the ship lurched with the impact of the strike. The Dominion convoys had no time to react. "Direct hit! Their engines are offline!" Carrick shouted, his voice filled with triumphant relief. But then Sarah noticed something that chilled her to the bone. Reinforcements were on the way. A large Dominion warship had entered the sector. "They've called for help!" Elena shouted, her hands flying across the console. "We've only got minutes before they bring more ships." Sarah's mind raced. This was supposed to be a small-scale attack, a calculated strike to weaken the Dominion's hold. But with the Dominion warship arriving, this mission had just become much more dangerous. "Get us out of here," Sarah barked. "We can't take on their main fleet head-to-head. Focus on hitting their engines and retreat. We need to leave before they can regroup." Sarah's pulse quickened, and as the SS Valiant began to turn, the Dominion's warship powered up its main cannons, charging for the counterattack. Would they make it out alive? The cold expanse of space outside the SS Valiant's hull was vast, but inside there was only heat. The mission that Sarah Matthews had planned, seeking out the Ghost, an ancient warship buried deep in the ice of Antarctica, was about to commence. She could feel the tension mounting in the ship's command center, but beneath the anticipation lay something deeper. A quiet fear that none of them could ignore. The Ghost wasn't just any ship. It was a weapon from a time long before the Dominion had spread its grasp across the galaxy. Built by an ancient race that had fought against the Dominion centuries ago, the Ghost was a symbol of a power that had once stood up to the overwhelming force of the Zeltrax Empire. But over time it had been abandoned, forgotten, until now. As Sarah stood before the crew in the briefing room, the weight of what they were about to do hung in the air. This mission wasn't just about salvaging a warship. It was about resurrecting the hope that humanity had lost. The Ghost was humanity's chance to change the tide of the war and to remind the Dominion that humans could not be snuffed out so easily. "Everyone knows the stakes," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "This is no longer just about winning. This is about survival. The Dominion took our world from us, but we're not going down without a fight. We're going to wake up the Ghost, and we're going to make them fear us." The crew nodded, but Sarah could see the weight of the task ahead in their eyes. No one could ignore the truth. The mission would be difficult, the odds nearly insurmountable. They would be traveling into Dominion-controlled territory, a dangerous journey that would require them to break through enemy lines to recover what had been buried under the ice for millennia. As Sarah paced the room, her thoughts turned inward. The Ghost was humanity's last hope, her last hope. If it failed, if the ship didn't awaken, there would be nothing left. No more battles to fight, no more alliances to build. Only the slow, inevitable extinction of humanity under the Dominion's oppressive reign. The weight of that possibility made her heart ache. But then there was Elena Rivers, the ship's lead engineer and former Dominion technician. Her loyalty to the cause was unquestionable. But Sarah knew there was more at play in Elena's mind. The Dominion had been Elena's former masters, and though she had defected, the scars of her past remained. It was Elena who had deciphered the coordinates leading to the Ghost, and it was Elena who would play the pivotal role in waking the ship. Sarah couldn't help but wonder what was going through Elena's mind. "Elena," Sarah said, stepping closer to her, breaking her from her thoughts. "You're sure we can do this?" Elena met her gaze, her eyes hard but resolute. "The ship's systems are complex, but if we can get past the Dominion defenses and gain access to the core, we can power it up. We have to. There's no other choice." Sarah nodded, her respect for Elena growing with every word. She knew that Elena, like everyone else on board, had her doubts, but it was their unwavering resolve that would carry them through. The SS Valiant dropped out of hyperspace, near the frozen wastes of Antarctica, the ghostly remnants of Earth's past now lying in wait. The icy surface of the planet stretched endlessly below them, and in the shadows, deep beneath the frost, the Ghost lay dormant, waiting for them. "Coordinates locked in," Elena said, tapping the console in front of her. "We're less than an hour away from the excavation site." Carrick, the tactical officer, spoke next. "We'll be in Dominion airspace soon. I suggest we move quickly. Their patrols are known to be swift and unforgiving." "We'll be ready," Sarah said, her tone calm but filled with determination. The Zeltrax Dominion wouldn't expect them. They wouldn't expect humanity to strike back, especially not with a weapon like the Ghost. As the SS Valiant descended toward the icy surface, Sarah could feel the familiar weight of responsibility pressing on her. She wasn't just leading a team. She was leading a rebellion. Every decision they made, every move they took, could either save humanity or doom it forever. The landing was rough, the ship shuddering as the ice around them cracked. But when the door to the landing bay opened, a cold gust of Antarctic air met them, and the crew immediately rushed to their positions. They had no time to waste. Every second counted, and the Dominion's presence was closer than ever. "Let's move!" Sarah shouted as she led the way, her heart racing as she saw the frozen tomb that held the ghost. The buried ship was a monumental sight, its massive hull encased in layers of thick ice, but the ancient warship still held a sense of awe and power. It stood as a testament to the strength of those who had fought against the Dominion's empire. "This is it," Elena whispered, her voice filled with awe as she approached the icy structure. "This is our ship, humanity's future." Sarah turned to face her crew, her expression hardening with the knowledge of the battle to come. "We awaken it. We take back our world. We make them fear humanity." With a nod from Sarah, Elena began the delicate work of unsealing the warship, her fingers dancing over the interface. Each moment felt like an eternity, and the tension in the air was palpable. They had to be quick. The Dominion was sure to track their movements soon. "Ready!" Elena called. The ship's systems flickered to life, and for a brief moment, it felt as though the universe itself held its breath. A deep rumble shook the ground as the ghost came alive, its lights flickering like a pulse of life returning. The ship's AI, ancient but powerful, hummed as the dormant warship began to power up, its weapon systems coming online. Sarah smiled, relief flooding her chest. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. As the ghost rumbled to life, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on everything they had lost. Her comrades, her world, everything they had sacrificed. But this moment, this victory, was proof that humanity could never be written off. They would rise again. "What happens now?" Elena asked, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "We have the ship, but do we have enough time to use it?" Sarah stared ahead, a grim smile on her face. "We have enough, and we will make them fear humanity." As the ghost powered up, Sarah Matthews knew that humanity's future had just changed. The Dominion had never expected humanity to find hope, to find a weapon from the past that could turn the tide of war. But now, armed with the ghost, humanity had a fighting chance. This was no longer a war for survival, it was a war for vengeance. And humanity would not rest until the Dominion had learned the true meaning of fear. Don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic sci-fi tales. What would you do if you had the power to awaken an ancient weapon? Let us know in the comments below. The SS Valiant drifted through space, the hum of its engines the only sound within the command center. For the first time since the beginning of humanity's war against the Zeltrax Dominion, Sarah Matthews felt a flicker of hope. The ancient warship, the Ghost, now stood as a symbol of resistance, a weapon built by an unknown race to defy the Dominion. Its powerful AI, Aurora, had fused with the consciousness of Sarah's trusted crew, unlocking secrets buried deep within the ship's systems. Now, armed with the Ghost, the resistance was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory. The Dominion, once so sure of their dominance, were now facing an enemy they had not anticipated: humanity. Sarah paced the command deck, her eyes scanning the holographic display as the fleet prepared for the first wave of coordinated strikes against the Dominion's core strongholds. The turning tide was palpable. They were no longer on the defensive. This was humanity's chance to show the galaxy the true power of human ingenuity and will. But beneath her determination, Sarah wrestled with doubt. Could they truly defeat the Dominion? Could they overcome the insurmountable odds stacked against them? Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice, a calm, soothing presence in the chaos. "Elena," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "We have the ghost, but can we really break through their defenses?" Elena Rivers, sitting at the communications console, met her gaze. "The ghost is more than just a weapon, Sarah. It's a legacy, a symbol of everything the Dominion failed to crush. If we use it right, we'll make them fear us." Sarah smiled grimly. She had never known Elena to back down from a fight, but even Elena could not ignore the gravity of what lay ahead. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Now, for the first time, they were facing an enemy that wasn't willing to submit. The SS Valiant entered the outskirts of the Dominion's most heavily fortified sector, the Vesca system. Sarah's tactical officers had calculated the risks, and they knew this would be their most dangerous mission yet. The Dominion, aware of their advances, had fortified the system with fleets of warships and massive defensive arrays designed to tear through any invading force. "We have no choice," Carrick said, his voice firm. "This is our best shot. If we can take Vesca, we take their heart. If we fail, they'll strike back harder than ever." Sarah knew Carrick was right. Vesca was the Dominion's last major stronghold. If humanity could breach it, it would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy, changing the balance of power forever. With a single glance at her crew, Sarah gave the order, "Initiate the attack. It's time to show the galaxy who we are." The attack began with precision, the SS Valiant leading the charge. The Ghost, now fully operational, was a weapon of pure destruction. Its advanced AI systems guided it through the Dominion fleet like a shadow, dodging enemy fire with inhuman speed. The ship's weapon systems unleashed waves of plasma and missile strikes, tearing through Dominion warships as though they were made of paper. "Direct hit!" Carrick shouted, as a Dominion destroyer exploded into a fiery ball of destruction. They weren't prepared for this. The battle raged across space. Humanity's fleet, now augmented by the power of the Ghost, tore through Dominion formations with the ferocity of a wounded animal. The tide was turning, but the Dominion, determined not to lose their grip on power, responded with equal violence. "Hold steady!" Sarah commanded, her voice commanding but steady. "We're not done yet. Keep pushing." The battle for Vesca reached its climax as the final Dominion warship fell. Yet Sarah could feel the weight of the decision ahead. The Dominion was broken, but the cost of this victory was heavy. Thousands of human lives had been lost in the fight, and many more would be sacrificed before the war was truly over. Sarah knew that this was only the beginning. The Dominion would retaliate. They would come back with everything they had. As the last of the Dominion fleet crumbled into space debris, Sarah stood at the command deck, watching the wreckage through the ship's viewports. The sight was beautiful in a way. Their greatest enemy was finally falling. Yet the victory felt hollow. "What happens now?" Elena's voice cut through the silence. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the debris as she exhaled slowly. "Now we finish it," she said softly. "Now we make them fear humanity." The battle for Vesca was a resounding victory, but Sarah Matthews knew that it had only marked the beginning of the end. The Dominion's defenses had been shattered, but the war was far from over. Humanity had taken its first steps toward reclaiming the galaxy, but Sarah knew the true test was yet to come. Humanity had proven that it was not just a victim. It was a force to be reckoned with. The battle for Vesca had been won. The Dominion's mightiest fortress had fallen, its fleet shattered into ruins. Humanity had struck a decisive blow, and yet, as the fires of battle faded, the cost of that victory became all too apparent. The price of defiance was steep. Lives lost, planets ravaged, and the weight of moral choices that would haunt the survivors forever. Sarah Matthews stood at the edge of the SS Valiant's command deck, looking out into the endless void of space. The stars twinkled softly, as if indifferent to the bloodshed that had taken place beneath them. Behind her, the crew went about their work, but Sarah knew that the relief they all felt was only temporary. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Her thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Carrick, her trusted first officer, as he stepped forward, his expression somber. "Captain," he began, his tone clipped. "The casualty reports are in." "It's not good." Sarah turned to face him, trying to mask the weariness in her eyes. "How bad is it?" "Too many to count," Carrick replied, his voice a mixture of anger and sadness. "We've lost several key fleets, and the Dominion's retaliation is already underway. They won't let us rest." For a moment, Sarah just stood there, letting the weight of the news sink in. Every victory came with a price, but this was a toll that felt unbearable. The Dominion's last-ditch assault on humanity's forces had decimated their ranks. Thousands of soldiers who had fought valiantly for a free galaxy, were now lost. Their sacrifices leaving a void that could never be filled. "Is there anything left to give?" Sarah muttered, more to herself than to Carrick. He didn't answer right away, his eyes betraying the truth neither of them wanted to admit. The galaxy was vast, but their numbers had dwindled. The once mighty human liberation fleet was now a fraction of what it had been. They were running out of time, and the pressure was growing heavier by the day. The sudden crisis had brought all of humanity's fragility into sharp focus. Sarah had led them through unimaginable odds, but with every win, the shadows of their past losses grew longer. The moral cost of war was something that gnawed at her soul. "What's the plan, Captain?" Carrick asked, his voice now firm with resolve. He trusted Sarah, but even his patience was beginning to wear thin. Sarah walked toward the tactical holograph, projecting the galaxy's layout before her. The remnants of the Dominion fleet were scattered throughout the galaxy, retreating but not defeated. The Desolation cannon, the superweapon that had nearly wiped out humanity, was still out there, and it was only a matter of time before the Dominion would try to use it again. Her crew was looking to her for answers. The weight of the galaxy rested on her shoulders, and she knew they couldn't afford hesitation. But was the price of victory too high? Was it worth the lives they'd lost to destroy one enemy, only to face an even greater threat? As the holographic map flickered in front of her, Sarah's mind raced. Her decisions in the coming days would decide not just humanity's fate, but the fate of all those who had fought alongside them. She felt the weight of those choices crashing down like a storm. "We move forward," she finally said, her voice low but certain. "We've lost too much to turn back now." In the quiet aftermath of the Vesca battle, Sarah took a moment to reflect on the choices that had led them here. Each victory had come with sacrifice, each decision pushing them closer to the edge of humanity's moral compass. She thought of the countless lives lost, the brave souls who had fought not just for their freedom, but for the galaxy's future. Her mind drifted to Elena, the brilliant strategist who had devised the plan for the Ghost's destruction of the Desolation cannon. Elena had insisted on the mission's success, but now she was lost to the black void, her sacrifice weighing heavily on Sarah's heart. She closed her eyes, feeling the sting of loss once again. But there was no time for mourning. The Dominion was regrouping and their vengeance was inevitable. The next battle would define the fate of the entire galaxy. The silence of space was shattered as Dominion warships began to mobilize. Sarah's command console flashed red, signaling an incoming attack. Their enemies were not finished. They never would be. They were relentless. "Captain, the Dominion's next wave is already en route," Carrick announced urgently. "We've got to act fast." Sarah's eyes narrowed as she looked at the display. A fleet, larger than any they had ever faced, was heading straight for them. The weight of her decision became clear. There was no turning back now. "Prepare the fleet," she shouted, her voice commanding and sharp. "We end this now." The fleet surged forward, the SS Valiant leading the charge. As the ships breached Dominion territory, a storm of plasma blasts filled the void. The deafening sounds of battle resonated through the ship as Sarah's crew engaged in what could be their final confrontation with the Dominion. Ships were torn apart in brilliant explosions, debris scattering in all directions. Humanity had come to reclaim its galaxy, and they were willing to fight until the last breath. But the Dominion retaliated with unrelenting fury, launching their own counterattack. Massive dreadnoughts loomed in the distance, their weapons charging for the final strike. The battle was brutal, a true test of humanity's will to survive. Sarah's heart pounded as she gave the order to engage. The outcome of this battle would determine the course of history. If they lost now, humanity would be extinguished, like a flame snuffed out in the dark. But there was no retreat. They would face the Dominion head-on, ready to fight to the very end. The dark expanse of space loomed ahead, stretching infinitely in every direction. But beneath the vastness, the final battle had begun. Humanity's forces, battered but unyielding, had assembled in a last-ditch attempt to crush the Dominion's grip on the galaxy. Sarah Matthews, now leading what was left of the human resistance, could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. The SS Valiant, the flagship of the Human Liberation Fleet, was flanked by a dozen smaller ships. They were up against the largest fleet the Dominion had ever mobilized. Over 300 ships, bristling with weapons, their sheer numbers intimidating. Yet, it wasn't the size of the enemy fleet that haunted Sarah. It was what they had to lose. Sarah stood at the bridge, her eyes scanning the view screen as the stars burned bright outside. The tension in the air was palpable. Her crew was silent, each person locked in their own thoughts. The cost of failure was too great, and as Sarah clenched her fists, the enormity of what was at stake hit her like a physical blow. "Ready to go, Captain," came Carrick's voice, breaking her reverie. She nodded, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "Then let's finish this." The ship's engines hummed with power as the fleet surged forward, entering the Dominion's defensive zone. Battle plans had been made, the final assault had begun. Sarah felt the weight of command like never before. She had led countless missions, but this was different. The clashing ideals of the war seemed to pulse through her veins. On one side, the Dominion, invaders who thought they could crush humanity beneath their heel. On the other, humans, underdogs who had been tested in ways no species ever should be, but who had risen again and again. The battle was not just a clash of ships and soldiers. It was a clash of identities, one side fighting for dominion and control, the other fighting for freedom and survival. The human soldiers, many of whom were only just beginning to understand their own strength, were not just facing an external enemy. They were facing the ghosts of their own fears, the memories of their fallen comrades who had given their lives for this very moment. Sarah glanced over at Elena, the tactical officer, her hands shaking as she manipulated the ship's command console. They were about to face the Desolation Cannon, the superweapon that had nearly annihilated Earth. The weapon had been the symbol of the Dominion's power, but Sarah was determined to turn it against them. But before they could strike, the Dominion's flagship, the Primarch's Wrath, loomed before them like a monstrous shadow. The ship's weapons powered up, and the first volleys of fire began. "Brace for impact!" Sarah shouted as the Valiant shook violently. The first few moments of the battle were chaos. Energy blasts filled the void, piercing the darkness like stars gone mad. Sarah's hands gripped the console as the ship swerved, dodging a plasma blast that would have torn them apart. Her heart pounded. The adrenaline flooded her senses, but even in the heat of the moment, she couldn't escape the gravity of her decisions. This was more than a mission. This was a reckoning, a test of humanity's spirit. A flash of light illuminated the space as another Dominion dreadnought exploded, debris scattering in all directions. The human ships were fighting with a fervor, driven by the memory of everything they had lost. But the Dominion's firepower was overwhelming. The Desolation Cannon, that single weapon capable of wiping out an entire planet, was charging. It was aimed directly at Earth. Sarah knew that the Dominion's goal was to destroy humanity's home, the last stronghold in the galaxy, but she refused to let them. Not today. "Fire the main cannons!" Sarah yelled as she slammed her fist onto the console. The Valiant's main weapons responded in kind, unleashing a volley of energy blasts that struck the Dominion flagship, causing its shields to flare with resistance. But even as they fought back, the Dominion was relentless. Plasma beams scorched the Valiant's hull, and the shields began to crack. The crew was pushing themselves to their limits, but the Desolation cannon was still firing up. "Target the cannon!" Sarah barked. "We need to stop it before it fires!" Elena nodded, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "I'm locking on. Ready to fire." The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Sarah could hear her heart pounding in her ears as the ship shuddered under fire. "Now!" Elena shouted. The Valiant's cannons fired, a concentrated blast of energy that slammed into the Dominion superweapon. For a moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance. Then, with a blinding explosion, the cannon's core detonated, sending a shockwave through the battlefield. The Desolation cannon was destroyed. The destruction of the cannon was a victory, but the battle was far from over. Sarah could see the Dominion fleet scrambling, their formation broken. It was time for the final push. "Charge!" Sarah commanded, and the Valiant surged forward with the full force of humanity's fury. The remaining Dominion ships fought back fiercely, but they were no match for the tenacity of humanity. The final battle unfolded in a storm of light and fire as ships collided, their hulls splitting open, and debris filling the void. Sarah's mind raced, her thoughts constantly shifting between the strategic battle in front of her and the ghosts of her fallen comrades. Every decision counted, every movement was critical. It was the ultimate test of leadership. The Primarch's wrath was directly ahead, its weapons charged and ready to destroy them all, but Sarah had no choice. She gave the final command. "Fire everything!" What would you do if you were in Sarah's shoes? Would you fight until the end, no matter the odds? Share your thoughts in the comments. The galaxy was silent. For the first time in centuries, the oppressive weight of the Dominion's iron grip had been shattered. The Primarch's wrath, the symbol of the Dominion's supremacy, now floated as a hulking wreck in the vast expanse of space, its once mighty weapons silenced forever. Earth had become more than just the site of the final battle. It had become a symbol of resistance, a beacon of humanity's resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Sarah Matthews stood on the bridge of the SS Valiant, her fingers gripping the cold metal railing, staring out into the starry void. The battle was over, but the weight of its aftermath pressed heavily on her shoulders. As the leader of humanity's final stand, she had led them to victory, but victory had not come without a cost. The wreckage of the Dominion fleet was scattered across the galaxy, and in their place, humanity had claimed its stake as the new dominant force in the universe. But the price of that victory was high. Thousands of lives had been lost. Cities had been reduced to ashes. The scars of war ran deep, not just in the galaxy, but within the hearts of those who had fought. Sarah's thoughts turned inward as she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Her fellow commanders, the soldiers who had fought by her side, had given everything they had. But it wasn't just the military that had carried humanity's banner. It was every single person who had stood tall against the Dominion's tyranny. Scientists, civilians, and engineers. They had all contributed in ways that could never be measured. It was the unity of their efforts that had turned the tide. Sarah thought of her old friend, Commander Callum, who had fallen in battle just days before the final push. His face, his words, had been burned into her mind. "Do not let them break you," he had said. "We are stronger than they think." And now, as she looked across the galaxy at the damage they had caused to the Dominion, she realized just how true those words had been. The ship's AI, Orion, hummed softly in the background, its soothing voice interrupting Sarah's thoughts. "Captain Matthews," Orion said, "I've received a transmission from Earth. The Council is awaiting your report." Sarah nodded. It was time. She hadn't allowed herself to think about what would happen next. But now the reality was settling in. The universe was changing. Humanity was no longer a fledgling species. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But what now? As she stood to leave the bridge, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The victory had been theirs, but it had come with a heavy toll. Sarah wondered if the universe could ever be the same after the war. Would the galaxy ever be able to trust humanity again? Or would they always see them as the rebels who toppled a great empire? As Sarah arrived in the council room, she was met with a room full of humanity's most influential leaders. Their eyes were filled with admiration, but also uncertainty. The future was unknown, and there were many questions that no one had the answers to. "What comes next?" Sarah was asked. It was a question she had been avoiding. She had led humanity to victory, but the responsibility didn't stop there. She wasn't just a commander anymore. She was the symbol of a new era, and now the weight of the future lay on her shoulders. She looked around the room at the faces of those who had trusted her. "We rebuild," Sarah said firmly, her voice carrying across the room. "We rebuild not just our cities, but the galaxy. We rebuild the relationships that have been shattered, and we ensure that we never forget the cost of this victory." The council chamber fell silent as Sarah's words echoed through the room. For a moment, there was a sense of awe, of unity. Humanity had not only defeated the Dominion, they had claimed their place in the stars. The room shifted. Conversations began. The leaders of the universe, alien and human alike, gathered together in a new spirit of unity. Sarah had been the catalyst for this change, but the future would not be hers alone to shape. What would you do in Sarah's shoes? Sarah thought, as she stepped away from the council room, back onto the bridge. The battle was over, but the true test of humanity had just begun. Rebuilding wasn't just about reassembling what had been broken. It was about ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to HFY Genesis. Your support means the world to me and helps grow this channel so I can continue to bring you more amazing sci-fi tales. If you've got thoughts or theories, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback and ideas. Remember, every like and share helps get these stories out to more people who love the HFY genre. Thanks again for being a part of this journey.